James Edward Geoffrey de Montmorency was a British writer, lawyer and law professor. Born in 1866, the son of James Lodge de Montmorency and Susan Kiddle, he graduated from Cambridge. In 1899, he married Caroline Maud Sumorris de Havilland. He was Queen Professor of Comparative Law at the University of London between 1920 and 1930. He died in 1934. As a writer, he published books on education, the British legal system, and a handful of short story collections published during World War I. In 1921, he published his final collection, The Admiral's Chair and Other Sketches and Vignettes, which was stated to be a sequel of sorts to two previous collections published during the war. This collection consists mostly of two parts. The first are linked stories of a Spanish pirate admiral, rife with adventure and occasional hints of the supernatural. However, the second is a series of boring didactic tales from the point of view of a bishop, championing better education for the poor. The Admiral's Chair is the first of the interconnected stories concerning James Port and his ancestor, James Port, who served under the Admiral, the notorious pirate of the Spanish Main, and relates how his chair, with his corpse tied onto it, was found bobbing on the water and came into the possession of the Port family. The Caverns of Elothera, second of the James Port stories, recounts how James spent 2 days in the mysterious caverns where the Admiral hid his treasure, pursued by a mysterious black man who had spent ages trying to steal the map leading to it, not even dissuaded by such minor complications as being dead. In The Looking Glass of Time, a strange man, a descendant of the Admiral, arrives at James Port's inn just as James reveals something left behind by the recurring spirit of the black man from the previous story, a mirror which shows scenes from the past from the days of the Pirate Admiral. The Golden Galleass is the final James Port story and recounts how Port's old friend Nicholas Gem and the Port and Gem children sailed to a nearby island, only to find the sunken Golden Galleass surfacing after several decades, its deck full of skeletons, and finding a chest that is left unopened by the end of the story. The Magic Bowl of Baghdad has 2 English soldiers being visited by their Arab friend Shamran, who saved them from captivity in the desert, who shows them a magic bowl which displays the events of their captivity in front of their eyes, before he suddenly disappears, the 2 men finding out he had died, despite having been with them at the same time. Poaching Pixies has poacher Fred Herridge recount to a pixie-doubting inn-visitor how the little buggers beat his legs something awful, and how he only survived by turning his socks inside out and swapping them to confuse them. The Poacher's Dilemma has this same Herridge wooing a Mrs. Williams, who demands he go and somehow bribe the army to let him go to war, despite not being of service age, saying that unless he do so, she would never allow him to marry her. Friar Bacon's Clock has a Mr. Goshworthy show the most prized part of his clock collection to Captain Clements, a clock possibly made by Roger Bacon. The clock is able to play back recordings of Chaucer and other historical figures, and Goshworthy speculates Bacon was working on machinery to unravel the records of time. The 2 decide to smash the clock, lest this interesting plot be allowed to develop. The next 5 stories are boring didactic sermons by the bishop whose diocese keeps shifting, Wiltchester, Wiltwater, etc., from story to story, but who only ever goes on about the need to improve the education for the poor, and that's about it. They are followed by the Cathedral Ghost, where a ghost is supposedly haunting a cathedral because a Mr. Snatchett removed a saint's head from the tomb for study, so the bishop goes and puts it back, and the haunting, which we never actually got to see, ends off screen. The Thunderstorm has 2 men drive a passenger in a bus to their village, only the bus is suddenly full of dead people who died in the war, so they go tell their granny, who is a witch, who hears them out and then goes to sleep.